All right, a different kind of power rankings is back, doing another year of this. If you did not check out any of these videos last year, let me just quickly explain how it works. I'm not going to get into all the nuts and bolts and every little detail, but basically, I created an algorithm a couple years back, and I have been updating it since. You have more updates this year, sort of how good you are at each specific position, how many wins that typically equates to. So last year, it was fun to do this, and I think this year it'll be fun to do it as well, where what I do is week after week, see where each team ranks up in the algorithm and how many wins they're projected to have for the rest of the season. Worth noting that it is not a perfect algorithm. There are some issues that even I have with it as the creator of the algorithm. Also worth mentioning, I do not choose where each team ranks. It is simply PFF grades. I look at PFF grades, that's what goes there, which is an imperfect solution, but there is no perfect solution. So, there will be some things that seem not quite right, especially week one. I remember last year, kind of funny, it was a funny situation that happened where after week one, the Broncos were on pace to have 17 wins because of how, good they played week one. Obviously, they did not quite do it that way, but small sample sizes are going to create weird situations, but also some fun situations to talk about. So if it doesn't make sense, hopefully it will make sense once we get into it. So let's get into it. So we're going to start from worst to best. I know that's how people prefer for me to do it. And again, just explaining what you see on the screen, you're going to see the chart at the bottom of the screen. That is going to be just saying, where each team ranked up. So for example, if you look at the Panthers quarterback situation, you see that they got 0.97 wins for their quarterback play. At least that's if their quarterback play continues at this quality for the entire season. That's on average how much they would get above replacement level. And then if you look at the chart where it says quarterback, it is tier 4. So that means they got tier 4 quarterback play. So that's how you read what you're looking at. Now let's just talk about what we got from these teams, starting with the Panthers, who are ranked 32nd here, which, there's a couple of things here. It's not like they were abysmal necessarily, but still not great if you're 32nd. Some talent in the wide receiving room, and Baker Mayfield was not terrible, but PFF was not a fan of their defense at all, giving them no points whatsoever for their defense. Also, one thing I should mention as well, you see how kickers, I put them all at 0.42 wins above replacement. I just, I added them all together and made it even for now, because with this being entirely a small sample size video, it's especially too much of a small sample size to take kicking into account. So I just made those all average for now, and we'll see if they get better. But back to the Panthers. Offensive line was Akeem Ekwonu did not have a great day, which was unfortunate. But it's also who they played against. That's going to obviously, the Browns are very good. That's going to have an impact there. But you hope to see the Panthers improve, which I'm sure they will, at least from this. I don't think they're going to end up with just 3 wins on the year. The Bears are another team where offensive line played well, actually. So you have that going for you. Little bit of stuff from the wide receiving room. They had the passing game for the Bears as the worst in football. So felt a bit harsh to me. But again, the conditions made it look worse. I'm sure it'll improve. Got some wins with the coverage, but still as a whole, there's things the Bears have to work on. But you won a game, so you have that going for you. Meanwhile, the Cardinals did not win a game. I mean, again, some stuff here. Quarterback play, you assume, will improve from Kyler. Receiving core was fine. I imagine it to stay that way until Hopkins gets there. Offensive line, you have, again, fine. You're not mad at that offensive line situation too much. But as a whole, there's just, there's some things the offensive line, there's just a thing, blah, 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 blah. There's just too many flaws, and specifically the coverage was a big issue. So, and again, another team with no wins coming out of that defense. Also, I made a quick typo on the Lions and Cardinals. It says 0.97 offensive line. It should actually, I did that with a couple of teams by mistake, actually. So it should be 0.84. So you lose, 0.13 of a win. So just throwing that out there. Not that it really comes into play, but just, in case you're wondering why it's that way, it was just a typo. Let's talk about the Lions, who still, you were hoping to see the wide receiving core and quarterback play be better than tier 5, which I'm sure it will be, but how great will it be? That's a fair question. Running game was really good, though, and offensive line was solid. You would like to see the offensive line maybe be better in tier 4, but it was still solid. So there's things to like here. Coverage looked actually a lot better than we've seen in years past, but as a whole, Lions, still things they need to improve upon. You have the Giants, who, again, another winner here. Kind of interesting. At the bottom 5, we have 2 teams that won and another team that was a field goal away from winning with the Carolina Panthers, who were actually the worst team. So interesting stuff there. Proves that you can win a game even if you don't play particularly well. The Giants, Daniel Jones was fine. Receiving core, you'd like to see better. Offensive line was tier 5. Running game was weirdly tier 5. I believe that's tier 4, but still surprising because Barkley was great. So that seems like, again, using PFF grades, I'm going to disagree sometimes. You're going to disagree sometimes. I'm sure that they have their reasoning for it, but that was a surprise for me. They stopped the run well. They were competent. I would have them a little bit better than where they're at here at 28, but I probably wouldn't have them anywhere above like 22 or something like that. Probably around maybe, they probably still belong on this panel, just maybe a little higher up. Then the Giants at 27, who again, there's some nice things here. The offensive line was not a mess. The coverage unit was actually pretty solid, all things considered, but Dak Prescott didn't play well. Receivers did not get open, and that's going to make things very difficult. As a whole, Micah Parsons was very good. Again, they had a couple of good individual players for the Cowboys, but you'd like to see them, I think, improve a little bit. Not sure how much they will if Prescott is injured. Hopefully it's not for too long. For the Jets, they actually liked Flacco's game enough. They gave Flacco a tier 3 grade, so there you go. But the receivers and the offensive line, not too great there. And really, the Ravens just completely shut them down in the secondary. It's the Ravens. They do that to people. But still, it's going to make you look worse when we only have one game of a sample size to talk about. I actually thought their defense was solid. It wasn't great, but it was solid. But the Ravens' defense was just suffocating, so that's why they lost. The Jaguars here, who, hey, you got a tier 4 quarterback play, which is better than you could say a lot of last year, so you're improving. The wide receiving core was tier 3, which is much better than it was for most of last year. Tier 1 running game. Like to see the offensive line improve, but there's some talent on this offense. They're slowly getting better, and even the running defense was very good. But, PFF did not love the pass rush grade. Because, again, they kind of value consistency more so than highlights. Trayvon Walker had that great sack and had that great interception, but he only had one pressure on the day as well. So I think that's why the grade is a little bit lower. And the coverage you'd like to see be a bit better as well. But I think it has potential to do that. All right, next tier. So I've always kind of felt like the bottom tier typically are the teams that are just out of it. The next tier are kind of the competitive teams that are still not winning football games. But again, week 1, some of these teams will certainly improve. Some of these teams will certainly get worse. Starting with the Packers, a team that we expect to improve. You saw, okay quarterback play out of Aaron Rodgers. They did not hate his play. I would probably had it a little bit lower than where they have it at 1.94. That is a tier 3 grade. I think I would have had it at tier 4, but still, I get why they did it because it wasn't on him at all. Receivers were struggling to get open. Offensive line really struggled, so running game even was fine, but not as great as we expect it to be. Defense was fine as well, but, they need things to improve. I think they can. I think, Rodgers is clearly a tier 1 quarterback. He will get there at a certain point. Offensive line, I think, will hopefully get healthier, but still, there's some issues on that O-line, so we'll see how much better they get. The Seahawks are here at 23. I don't know if Geno Smith will be a tier 2 quarterback all season, but he was for week 1, so you got to give him credit there. As a whole, though, well, nothing was really abysmal. They're the first team on this list to have no zeros across the board. They also don't have exactly a lot of high numbers either, so because of that, that's why they're lower. Surprisingly, the Dolphins are here at 22. I don't get this one at all. To me, their coverage should be way better than tier 4. I thought their coverage was tier 1. So I think that's a big chunk of why they're lower than I would personally have them. I'd also have Tua better than tier 4. Tua feels like a tier 3 quarterback for me. So you bump those things up. You're talking about a 4-win difference. And from that point, you're talking about the Dolphins as a top 10 team, which to me feels a lot more accurate given what we saw week 1. So that's why, again, I'm going to disagree with these grades as well. And you can disagree with my disagreement, or you can disagree with the grades in a way that I agree. That's part of the fun. The algorithm is the fun part. I'm also giving my opinions, and that's, they're two separate things there. The Ravens, another team that the algorithm just always hurts the Ravens because, the algorithm values how you throw the ball well and defend the pass well, which is how, most teams win football games. But there are some exceptions like the Baltimore Ravens. So because of them getting 0 in the running game, but the threat of their running is what made their passing attack work a lot better. And again, don't get the coverage grade being tier 3. That's better than tier 3. It was awesome against the Jets. I am confused as to why that was the case. I guess some of their corners didn't get great grades, but I thought that they were shutting guys down, so that's what I'm confused about, and I expect them to continue to cover well. So Pro Football Focus themselves acknowledges that in small sample sizes, their grades are not perfect, especially in the coverage. So I'm going to just go with that and say the small sample size makes them look worse. They're definitely a better team than 21st. The Browns are here at 20th, and the reality is I think this is fair. Again, their coverage had some, as a whole, played well. Their coverage is very talented, but had a couple blown coverages, so their tier 3 for a 1-week grade actually checks out for me. The running game was fantastic. Nick Chubb is awesome. Offensive line was very good. But without having successful quarterback play or wide receiving play, there is kind of a limit on this team. But of course, you just have to stay afloat until Watson gets there. That's what the Browns are trying to do. The Raiders are here as well. Nice to see the Raiders not being a mess. They had a tier 1 wide receiver play, which, I'm not sure if I fully agree with. It could be tier 2, but it was very good. Adams helped a ton. And you have to hope, if you're a Raiders fan, Derek Carr will not continue to be a tier 5 quarterback. So just that shift could make them a lot better. Their defense did some nice things. You'd like to see their coverage play better. Their coverage was very good last year, but they lost Casey Hayward, so that's going to be a hindrance there. But as a whole, there's potential here with this Raiders team despite their loss. The 49ers here are at 18th. Again, weird situation with San Francisco. They lost the game to the Bears, who this algorithm has as the 31st team in football, but it was such a weird weather game. I don't know how much to blame them for, because, again, one thing about the 49ers, you expect their wide receiving core to start playing a lot better because they are a team that, they were in a weird spot with kind of the weather that probably hurt them a little bit. Their coverage was solid, according to PFF. Their offensive line was very good. You'd like to see Trey Lance pick it up, but again, bad weather, that kind of hurts them. Hard to really know how to evaluate the 49ers until we get to see them play a normal weather game. The Texans are here at 17. Davis Mills with that tier 3 quarterback play. You hope that can continue if you're a Texans fan. The offensive line and wide receiver, you got some value there, and their coverage was very good. Derek Stingley, a great first game for a corner, so that's very exciting if you're a Texans fan. Still some holes on this roster, but that's why they couldn't make top half, but they are, still looking good. Hey, if they get 8 or 9 wins this season, that's a massive win if you're a Texans fan. They tie, so they end up here at 17. And actually, number 16, we have the Colts, the team that they tied with. So very fascinating there. Again, Matt Ryan was fine, made too many mistakes, but was fine. Receiving core was fine. Offensive line was pretty solid. So, nothing really is a mess here. It's just, maybe you would have liked to see Jonathan Taylor get a tier 1 grade. I'm sure he will by the end of the year. Maybe you'd like to see the coverage be a little bit better. That's probably the one biggest disappointment, but they're still here at, I have them at 16. They're actually tied for 15th, but I wrote 16 instead by mistake, so there you go. Listen, got to do this all myself. Typos are going to happen. Let's talk about number 15, the team that's tied with the Colts, actually, the Patriots, who, there's stuff to like about this Patriots team. I do. That tier 5 coverage, though, I don't know if I fully agree with it, but you have to just assume that's going to get better once Bill Belichick kind of figures out exactly how to use these guys. So the Patriots always do well in this algorithm. Maybe they do too well because they did very well last year and then got blown out in the playoffs. So perhaps they kind of break the algorithm a little bit. I don't know, because, it is using PFF grades, which are very much a batting average stat, and that's what Bill Belichick likes, is guys who are just going to win a high percentage of the time, maybe don't have the home run hitters. So we'll see how that goes, I think. Number 14, the Falcons. This is optimistic if you are a Falcons fan. Hey, 14th on the roster here. They got solid quarterback play from Marcus Mariota. Receivers looked solid. Offensive line looked good. Coverage, maybe you'd like to see it play a little bit better, given the fact that you have Casey Hayward and A.J. Terrell, but, it takes more than 2 guys. I think that's fair to say. But if all the stuff can continue and their coverage plays better because of those 2 great guys, you could be looking at a Could you be looking at a fringe playoff team? I don't know. But hey, 14 teams make the playoffs. They're here at 14th. So you played well week 1, certainly. In fact, you have 3 teams from the NFC South in this group, interestingly enough. But let's talk about the balls. That is the Washington football team. Great wide receiving play. Good quarterback play from Carson Wentz. Yes, those 2 mistakes were awful, but he played really well outside of that. And if you can get that kind of play from Carson Wentz, I'm still not sure if he's totally worth his contract, but he's pretty close to being worth his contract there. So that's very exciting. Offensive line played well as well, and you got some value from the defense, but hopefully you get more as the season progresses. The Rams are still here at 12, and this is another team where, the Rams and Bengals, who are at 12 and 11, those are 2 teams that consistently do well in the algorithm, which, maybe there's some reason to believe that's a positive attribute for the algorithm, given the fact that those 2 teams went to the Super Bowl last year and the Rams won it, and the algorithm was consistently very high on those 2 teams. For the Rams, it says that their offensive line was underwhelming and also their pass rush was underwhelming, but this algorithm doesn't value those as highly as other people do, so because of that, there were still some nice things about the Rams, and same thing with the Bengals. Their coverage was tier 1. You get a lot of wins that way, so even with some lackluster quarterback play, which you assume will improve, and you assume that, I think it's fair to say there's a good chance at least Stafford will play better than tier 3. With that, you can definitely hope that these 2 teams will be better than fringe top 10 teams, as they were the 2 best teams in football debatably last season. At number 10 and number 9, Tampa Bay and New Orleans, the 2 teams that we expect to be competing for the division lead. We'll start off with New Orleans, who got good quarterback play from Jameis. Love that. If he can play like a tier 2 quarterback, you're going to feel great. Good wide receiver play, which that was a question mark coming in. It looks pretty good. A lot of those question marks, Michael Thomas looks good. Jarvis Landry looks good. Chris Olave looks good. This could be a very exciting offense if all that works out well, and tier 1 running game. So offense, very good. Defense, actually a bit disappointing week 1, which is a bit of a surprise that they still got a win with a kind of a disappointing defense. It was an offensive win, but this Saints team, I think their defense will get better. They are very good, and I can expect them to be very good. They're on pace for 11 wins, according to the algorithm, just behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who offensive line, the injuries, again, it actually should be 13 wins lower, but still, or not 13 wins lower, 0.13 wins lower. But the rest of what this team does well made up for it. They throw the ball very well with their quarterback being Tom Brady and the receiving core being a lot of very talented players, and defense very good. They can stop the run well. They can cover well. Don't really rush the passer that well, but you can be okay with that if you can do the other 2 aspects well, and that's what they do. So there you go. Top 8, we have some surprises here, but again, small sample size. These things, I feel around week 4 that it really evened out last season. I'm expecting something like that to happen this season, but still interesting to look at, I think. The Broncos here, they were at 8th despite the fact that they lost. So again, kind of interesting that they lose to a team that the algorithm has at 23rd. They still are 8th because their coverage was still got a very good grade. And again, they were the better team against Seattle. Those 2 goal line fumbles are going to definitely, cost you a lot of points there, but you're still very talented. Defense looked good. Offense, I thought looked good. I thought the Broncos did look pretty good, but you just hate that you lost. Again, we'll see how it works out as more time goes on. I think you would have liked to actually perform better in the algorithm when you're playing a team as poor as the Seahawks, and certainly would have liked to win. So that's the issue. The Steelers here at 7, really on the strength of that coverage unit, which if your coverage is tier 1, you're going to probably do pretty well. If coverage, wide receivers, or quarterback, if those things do well, you do well. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. The Pittsburgh Steelers had the coverage there. Quarterback play was solid. Wide receiving play was solid. You want to see that improve, though, if they're going to be a serious playoff contender. And, of course, losing TJ Watt is going to hurt you a significant margin. And the Steelers always actually underperform in the algorithm. So seeing them kind of overperform in week 1, that can get you optimistic. I'm interested in what this Steelers team is going to do the rest of the way. Number 6, you have the Chargers, who tier 1 quarterback play, that's going to help a lot. Tier 2 wide receiving play, and Tier 3 coverage play. So in the money positions, they're getting a decent amount of wins there. Offensive line, not spectacular, but not bad either. You have the the rest of the defense. The pass rush got you a good chunk of wins. Hopefully that can continue. Khalil Mack looks like he is right back, in his prime, which that was a big risk they took in the offseason. But if they're getting that Khalil Mack, there's a big reward there as well. Number 5, the Eagles, who you have to assume that the Tier 1 quarterback play won't continue all season for Jalen Hurts, but he was good. Again, I'm not sure Tier 1 good, but he was good. I don't disagree with him being high up on the list at all. He did play very well. The rest of the team was solid. Again, you got some wins across the board. Coverage was solid. Wide receiving play was solid. Offensive line was very good, and the defensive line was good. So, not to mention a Tier 1 running game on top of it. That's why they're a top 5 team according to the algorithm. And then number 4, you had the Chiefs, who did not get credit for Tier 1 quarterback play. They got Tier 2 quarterback play, but Tier 1 receiving play, which is definitely a surprise. I thought their receivers would be better than people were making them out to be. I wasn't expecting Tier 1. Don't think it will be Tier 1 all season, but, at least you have some good stuff there. Offensive line was very good. And the coverage unit actually got credit for Tier 1. I have to imagine when they play a team that's not the Cardinals, it won't be quite as good because the Cardinals, losing Hopkins, receivers weren't that great. They were able to suffocate there. Don't expect it to continue Tier 1, but for now, they're looking pretty good. Also, this is probably the biggest surprise. The Titans at number 3, despite losing to the Giants. So, not sure exactly what's happening there. I guess, Ryan Tannehill got credit for Tier 1 quarterback play, and the coverage got credit for Tier 1 coverage play, which coverage, I think, actually will be that way potentially all season, and that could be a way this team could make the playoffs. Tannehill is not a Tier 1 quarterback. I like Tannehill. I had him as a Tier 3 quarterback entering this year, kind of a high Tier 3, fringe Tier 2 guy, so you could have him at Tier 2 if you wanted to, but you have to assume that, that's not going to be this way all season long, but the other stuff could be. Pass rush, which I was saying, I don't know about this pass rush. They lose Harold Landry, end up getting Tier 1 pass rush week 1, so maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm sure Titans fans will be yelling at their screen, yes, you weren't wrong about that, you idiot, but we got to see more time. We got to see more of a sample size. Offensive line looked good as well, though, so don't think the Titans are the 3rd best team in football after losing to the Giants, but I do think that, there's still some things they do very well. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills, who dominated the reigning champs, the Rams, in the Thursday night game, so it makes sense that they are very high up here with, Tier 1 quarterback play, Tier 1 wide receiver play, and Tier 2 coverage play. The only reason they're not above the number 1 team is because they had Tier 2 coverage play instead of Tier 1 coverage play, but they were right behind that number 1 team. Great pass rush on top of it, very good run defense, and the offensive line played well. So I had some concerns about can Gabriel Davis be a true number 2 guy and be a good number 2 guy. I was wrong. That's not a question. The question is, can he be a number 1 guy? And the answer to that is yes, because he was incredible week 1. So feel very good about that if you're a Bills fan. They could continue to play well. The Vikings, though, managed to make the number 1 spot, which, again, is 1 game sample size. The Broncos were number 1 last year with Teddy Bridgewater getting Tier 1 quarterback play credit. But the Vikings could be very good. Their receiving core, their coverage, and their quarterback were all Tier 1. They're the only team that can say that, and that's a big part of why they are number 1 on this list. If you can get Tier 1 at those 3 categories, you're typically going to the Super Bowl. Like, the reality is, you almost always go to the Super Bowl if you get Tier 1 at all of those categories, and the Vikings are Tier 1 right now. Don't know if that'll continue, specifically to coverage and probably to quarterback play as well. But hey, Kirk Cousins has looked very good in, the past decent sample size that we've seen of him now. He was great last year and has been very good through this 1 week, so maybe this will continue. Still some potential issues on the offensive line, but as a whole, I still think that there's a lot to like about this Vikings team. They played great week 1. It is a small sample size. We're just talking about 60 minutes to 70 minutes for some of these teams. So we don't know exactly. There will be reshuffling week after week, but this is where they rank in terms of the analytics week 1, which I always kind of have this is fun, but we can't really learn too much until we have a few games to really look at it. So that's what I think. What do you think about this, though? I know Power Rankings always gets the comments section riled up, but that's the fun of Power Rankings. This stuff isn't fun if there isn't a lot of disagreements. Let's not try to not call each other idiots, but let's be honest. I'm sure you guys still will, or at least some of you will. But, regardless, it's fun anyway. So let me know what you thought of this in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.